writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Write Pack. Welcome back to Write Pack Radio. This is your host, David Allen Lucas, author of mystery and science fiction. And with me today is...
co-host Kathleen K. I have published paranormal romance under the pen name Paseka and Vita, and I'm excited for today.
Cool.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I'm a children's book author and illustrator. I have a book available on Amazon called Dog Park by Jennifer Stolzer. It's actually in the front window of STL Books right now, and that makes me very excited because I feel honored.
There you go.
A+.
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis, and I am president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.
I'm Melanie Quaney. I write sci-fi, fantasy, and nonfiction, and lately I've been getting my name as one of like 6 authors on nonfiction articles, but unless you're into science literature, you're never going to come across it.
I'm Matt McGraw. I'm an amateur short story writer. I'm also the writing half of a picture book called Patrick the Spider, the easy half.
Wait, okay, which is the easy half, the writer or the illustrator?
I'd say writer. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm on that side.
Okay.
I know, you felt like you had an easy time with Patrick the Spider.
Mm-hmm.
Meredith Tate, writer of speculative YA and new adult, and my first novel, Missing Pieces, came out on March 3rd, so if you like dystopian or romance, you should check it out.
Great.
Yeah, and welcome back from your first book tour.
Thank you.
Book tours.
By tour, you mean signing in New Hampshire where there's like 50 feet of snow on the ground, and yes.
Signing in 50 feet of snow.
Yeah, crowds of people coming to buy your book in 50 feet of snow, right?
Oh. Yes, it's
Selling out of your book.
Yes, it sold out, so that was cool.
Now, if you could just, take some over to London and do a London book signing.
Nobody would know who I was. So.
It doesn't mean you can't do a book signing.
Okay, and on that note, today we're going to talk about a very strange topic in writing. Forgettable characters. And I've threatened to do this. I guess, Jen, I am going to do this. You're so forgettable in every way. We don't even remember one line of your dialogue.
What part you play?
'Cause you're just absolutely forgettable. Why did you even exist? Okay. So, let's talk about forgettable characters. People as plot points to prop up lazy writing. And I'm going to do a spoiler alert, or a warning alert. Knowing me, I am going to probably go off on one of most literature teachers' favorite pet books. I will warn you ahead of time. I hated it, and it's because I saw very forgettable characters in this. So, but before I jump the gun, what would you call a forgettable character? Why do they exist?
Can we turn this over to Jen, please?
Why? What am I going to say?
Well, if she doesn't know, we probably...
Specifically, the people as plot points and props for lazy writing. Children, women, characters who are distinctly diverse. These are the ones that I've noticed are not actually characters often enough. They're not characters. They have no they're not well-rounded people. They are either a message or a reason for the protagonist to do this or some kind of prop.
I can think of another case. I was just thinking of forgettable characters, and one that I mentioned before was Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility. She writes very full characters, but in that book there are 5 daughters. And of the 5 daughters, 2 of them could probably be removed.
Replaced by a lamp?
Yeah, and that would probably not really influence the plot too much, but I just realized there is a point to having 5 daughters. 5 daughters means 5 dowries. And that means a lot more than just having to fund 3 dowries. So the point is they exist is important to the story, but Kitty and Mary don't really. They have characters. It's just they don't do much.
So, are we talking about characters that are forgettable because they don't really do much, then? Or characters that are forgettable because they have no actual character? There's no character to be had with them.
I'm going to go with... Well, actually, you've got a couple of aspects there, and I'm going to jump on one you mentioned before Melanie talked, and that is the character who is the... I'm going to throw it out there. I'm going to say the...
Token?
No.
There's a whole different topic.
Issue character. They only exist in the story because they are something which society, look at this bad part of it. And I'm going to throw out there, I'm going to go ahead and jump on my least favorite book in the world, Grapes of Wrath. There's a turtle in this book that crosses the road for an entire chapter. It is more memorable. More memorable than the antagonist of Grapes of Wrath.
I don't remember the antagonist.
Thank you.
There was an antagonist in that book.
There was.
It was just dryness.
Well, you had dryness too, but you had the antagonists were supposed to be the people who were running the big farms and so forth.
The banks.
The banks. And they were evil because they were banks.
Because they were
evil.
No, because they refused to help people whom they could have helped, but they didn't, because it would not be in their best monetary interest.
Sounds familiar.
Right. But as far as writing is concerned, it was like I could see through it. Sorry.
The point you're making is
The point I'm making that is you don't remember these type characters, even though you're really wanting to make a story that is changing of society, a reflection of society, a reflection of what might be bad or what might be good.
So,
you still don't remember it.
By treating the banks as a character, by giving them names and presence in the story, you would have enjoyed the Grapes of Wrath a lot more.
Yes.
Well, understand that Grapes of Wrath speaks to a particular time in our history and shows us the emotional end of it, the way a few odd facts about the Dust Bowl and the Depression never would.
Sure.
So I think it has a place in history, regardless of whether you like it or not, David.
That's fine. But you know what? John Gardner agrees with me, and I'll just leave it there.
Well, in that case, like, would the book really benefit from like more well-rounded banks? Well, banks as characters.
It's a morality tale. It's not really about characters.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, the banks are just they're an evil force.
But you know, I think that's where I'm going to go with the forgettable versus unforgettable. Is an unforgettable antagonist or an unforgettable protagonist. Okay, what side you take on? I'm going to pick on antagonists. We're talking about Grapes of Wrath. There's a reason why that they are the way they are. Now I know, Fedora, you just said because they were making decisions that were monetarily important to the bank or feasible for the bank. Understood. But from the point of view of the character, they are their own hero. They're not just evil or not just doing it because they're following a policy or because that's the way they are. There's a reason why they got to there. Think of Lex Luthor. Think of Darth Vader. Think of, I know I'm throwing out wrong sides here. Think of Hal in 2001, 2010. He was the antagonist computer.
I didn't know he was into 2010. I knew he was in 2000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they go and
2001, 10,
okay.
and so forth. And it turns out he was programmed, and dual programming caused him to basically hate fire. Think of a lot of the good books that are out there, or other books are out there. I know some people love Grapes of Wrath. I'm patting.
I'm not saying I love the book.
No, I know, you're fighting me. That's all right. But there's a reason for that antagonist to be the way they are.
Everyone's a hero of their own
There's
story.
a reason with the Jodes, too, because they are the very bottom of society. They are uneducated, they have no land, they have no prospects, they have only their own grit to get them by. And so, while you can despise them, you also have to admire them because they do survive somehow.
I would like to bring up something that Matt made me think of. different types of stories require different types of characters. And it sounds to me like what you were expecting in Grapes of Wrath was a more fully fledged character than what you received. And I think my expectations for fairy tale characters are very different from my expectations for novel characters. So I think maybe we should talk about what our expectations are for characters, or just specify what genres we're discussing, like just mainstream and literary novels of various kinds. Stories where you expect to see a full character.
I don't think, the point is we're talking about writing characters. So a book that has a character in it, any book should treat their characters with respect, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. You should respect your characters and respect your audience members, because your audience members know that those people are people. And we're trusting the author to write people that are real. And that means everyone has a facet to them that's positive, everyone has a facet that's negative, they have their own tics and personalities and likes, and even if those things aren't important to the story, they exist enough within that person that you have to keep them in mind while you're writing them. That's what makes someone a well-rounded character. I don't really care if we're supposed to love the Grapes of Wrath or not. I didn't like the Grapes of Wrath because I found it horribly boring. I found it horribly boring because I didn't know who anyone was. And that didn't, it served its purpose, but did it make a good story for me? Not really, because I honestly, the only name I remember is the Rose of Sharon, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because I was traumatized by the last chapter of that book. But it's true, I don't remember, I didn't remember the name of anybody until you brought them up, Fedora. I didn't remember anyone. And it was, since we're talking about forgettable characters, the reason why I think that I don't remember, even though I did a months-long high school study on that book, is because those characters did not feel real to me. They didn't feel like real people that I hung out with for months. They were names that served a purpose and weren't necessarily characters. They were props.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going off of what everyone said, I had a few examples of, in terms of villains, if a villain is interesting to me, I will remember them even if I don't like them. And an example I had was Voldemort, that nobody likes Voldemort, but he's very interesting as a character. We learned about his backstory, we learned a little bit about how he was raised, his motives, his prejudices, and kind of how that influenced the story. And then going on to the protagonist route, I was thinking of two protagonists that I read about in high school, thankfully not the Grapes of Wrath, but Holden Caulfield and Randall Patrick McMurphy. Both of those characters, to me, they were the protagonists. I didn't always like them, but I haven't read those.
Murphy?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay.
And I haven't read either of those in probably over 10 years, and I still remember them. I still remember who they are and their quirks, because to me, they felt like real people. They were kind of obnoxious and arrogant, but they were people. They had flaws, and they had...
Oh, and just in case someone doesn't know, Holden Caulfield was a Catcher in the Rye.
Yes. Yes. And, but then going off of that, again, as I said, I haven't read those since high school. I was thinking about another book series, and I actually love this book series. I know not everyone at this table shares my opinion, but the Maze Runner books. But I read those a year ago, and I still have a hard time remembering specific things about the characters, because they weren't fully fleshed out, in my opinion. And again, I loved the books. I found them very interesting. But the characters, to me, felt paper thin. And again, I read those a year ago. I couldn't tell you a whole lot about them. But these books I read 10 years ago, I can tell you everything about them. So I think that's an example for me.
Sorry?
Well, you were talking about the most important characters in those two pieces. But let me make a case for throwaway characters, which do just one thing and do it well. Do it fast and get the hell off the stage. I look to no one other than Shakespeare himself. Look at Romeo and Juliet. A person in there that you see kind of off in the distance at a dance is Count Paris, the intended of Juliet, at least according to her parents. It's the intended. And they're supposed to get married in a couple of years, until all of this stuff comes down outside with Mercutio dead in a big fight. And Dad says, no, it's going to be 3 days from now. You see, that's a very important plot point, because it makes everything happen right now. It gives it immediacy. It raises the stakes. And that's his whole job, and he does it well, and he gets the hell off the stage.
But is he a character?
Of course he's a character. He's got a name.
Does he do anything?
He shows up. He gets jilted.
Up
He's
and
like-
dances.
He's
He
a
does less
slut.
than the messenger, though.
He
Like, the
does
messenger
goodbye.
shows up and just says, "Hey, the Duke's coming to Vienna. See ya."
He did more.
That's
Important
doing more.
information.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Yes.
true.
I think there's an important distinction to be made between throwaway characters, though, who have that one job, and they do their job, and they get off the stage.
And the entire cast of the Grapes of Wrath.
And characters who are recurring characters, who are supposed to be among the main cast, who we don't actually see as fleshed out people.
Well,
But you said forgettable. I think Count Paris is pretty darn forgettable.
You remember
I
him?
agree.
I just want the actor.
I'll be honest. I
Actually,
forgot.
I forgot he existed at all.
And I don't actually have a problem with throwaway, forgettable characters in all situations. If you think about it, unless you spend the entire book fleshing out however many characters in your cast, that would be a 1,000-page book. And an example of this is Game of Thrones. That is an enormous cast, but I do feel like with maybe 15 main characters, they're all fleshed out. But that doesn't mean they're not a bunch of throwaway characters that might pop up from time to time that I don't remember.
Just to make it a quick point, I'm going to turn it over to you. Perfect example. I mean, this does not exist. I'm making this off the top of my head. Using a detective, Philip Marlowe. Philip Marlowe walks into the bar. He's there to meet somebody. The bartender serves him a scotch. We don't really need to know that much about the bartender. He might say hello and gone.
These are great points. Focus matters. And you have to know what matters, what kind of story you're trying to tell. There's a lot of people that pop up even in a real person's life that don't, you don't really have any interaction with them. They never get fleshed out. I was just at a bar a half hour ago, so if I'm a little talkative, that might be why. There was a bartender there, and she gave me a drink, and I paid her some money. I don't know anything about her. I will never know anything about her. But, I'm sure she's her own person, but it's not going to crop up in my book. Time is finite, and you have to allocate your resources as needed.
I dare say that bartender was part of the setting.
That's also a very good point.
I'd like to talk about the Resident Evil movies. I
Why?
love them. Because I think it is a sterling example of these kinds of characters that are forgettable, that are used as props, that don't really have character. Which is, I think, what we were trying to discuss today, more so than all forgettable characters.
Because we'd be here all day and
Yes.
trying to think of characters.
So the main character in Resident Evil is Alice, played by Mila Jovovich. And she's gorgeous, and she's sexy, and she kicks butt, and she occasionally has superpowers. That's great.
Whatever.
She doesn't have a well-rounded character herself, but she's the one who kicks butt and survives the zombies. That's her character. Everyone else in the cast that we meet is forgettable in the sense that they are used as plot points. We know certain things about them based on what other people tell us. This one's going to be the big brotherly kind, and this one's going to be the hard-ass woman that actually is awesome and is a mama bear about the people she's trying to protect. All of these characters, I don't remember. I'm making up examples based on the kinds of things that I think are probably in the Resident Evil movies, because all I remember is Mila Jovovich kicking zombie butt. That's all I really need to remember. But these characters are used to do things like, someone went crazy and let in the zombies, and now we're all going to die. Things like that. They're not actually characters. They're plot points.
And are you expected to be sad when they die?
No.
See,
They're
there's an
not, because
important
there's
point.
no character there to be sad about having died.
Are we sure you weren't expected to be sad?
There's not enough
Or were
character
you just
for
not
those
sad?
things. You know that Alice will live and everyone else is potential zombie fodder. And that's the agreement the movie makes with you. The series makes with you.
And kind of going off of what she said, and I don't want to bring the conversation to this whole different topic, but something that really irks me in terms of well fleshed out forgettable or versus unforgettable characters is the quote unquote strong female character. Because what a lot of people kind of is the thing right now, and I love strong female characters, but it's making these female characters just strong
What
and
does
nothing
it
else.
mean? What does it mean?
Strong female character.
There's only one type of strength, and that is man beating up people's strength.
Yeah.
But that's not actually. But that's what people
But for
do.
yeah, exactly. For a woman, that's great, but a woman could also have a lot of other strengths and weaknesses aside from just beating characters up. And for me, if a character is nothing but physically strong with no other personality traits, I have no reason to remember them.
That's an 80s action hero. Yeah. Like
It's-
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, all of his characters are
Tell us
forgettable
strong
too.
female character. No.
Strong
like-
female character, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Do you remember?
That was on purpose. Sorry.
Junior.
The mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Junior.
Mr. Nanny.
Yeah, Arnold is a great example of a forgettable character. In all these movies that Arnold's in, can you name his character in any of them? No.
The Terminator.
But he had
That's
a name
the
too.
title
He's
of
the
the movie, you
T800.
cheated.
The T800.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a name. Did you remember it? I remembered it because I'm a nerd. But he had a name in like Predator. You guys remember his name in Predator? No.
The guy who lives.
Yeah, gets it to Choppa. That's his
Arnold.
name. No, the reason you went to see that movie was because The Predator and Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it. You went to see the actor, not the character.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different
He always
kind.
pretty much plays
Yeah,
Arnold.
you know,
Mhm.
but his character isn't fleshed out. It's not that the movie wasn't fun to watch then, but the story-wise, as far as character development goes, he did not have a well-developed character. His character was forgettable.
Well, let me ask this question, and Fedora, I know you get your hand up, and I'm going to go to you next anyway. Are forgettable characters background or setting,
Setting
as someone else said, B, tropes,
can be both.
or just bad writing? And I'll turn it over to you as well for.
Okay.
I mean, I'm purposely circling the drain on this. Go ahead.
That was a wonderful
Just
direction.
blush.
Well, I want to talk about a little piece of the Big Bang Theory, which I love. I love the Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
Anyway, they were all going to go as members of Star Trek to a convention.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, Sheldon was going to be Spock, and Leonard was going to be the Shatner character.
Kirk.
Oh, there we go.
Is Kirk-
The one that populated the galaxy. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, your nerd card was
I'm
never
sorry.
ratified.
It wasn't punched. And let's see, Howard was going to be the engineer. Scotty.
He's gonna be
was
Howard was going to be Scotty. I didn't see this
Okay,
episode.
yeah. And,
I would have made
and so
him check off.
Sheldon wanted Amy Ferry Fowler, who's a doctor, to of course be Bones.
Uh-huh.
And poor little Cooter Polly says, "And what am I? The black guy that gets killed first?"
Oh, you're the red shirt.
And it's exactly the same thing as what happens in Aliens. Do you remember the name of the guy who gets killed first in Aliens? Because I looked it up.
Who gets killed? Kane. Kane gets
No.
killed first in Alien.
No.
Oh, Aliens. The second one?
Aliens, the second.
Second movie.
I got to play that movie in my head now.
Does Alien have a more memorable one? Yeah, because I
Kane, yeah, he
can
got
think of
killed on
his
his
face.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, he got killed first.
No, I think of when he's thrashing around on the table and he's like, "Whoa!" and the
Chest
thing comes
popper.
out.
No.
Technically, the first person to get killed in Aliens time-wise was actually Newt's parents. If you want to break it down,
Well, they weren't
brass
in the
tacks.
movie. No,
They
I
were
don't
if you
think-
watch the director's cut.
I did. The director's cut.
Get out of here with your director.
I'm just here to irritate you today.
No, his name was Frost,
Oh yes.
and he was the black guy that got killed first in Aliens.
Oh,
Or the black guy who
it's
gets
a
killed
cliche.
first in any
Exactly,
movie.
which is
If you're black
often
and you're
it
in a
is.
movie where people
and
die,
and
to be
it's
fair-
a kind of
and-
racist thing, I do believe.
Actually, I will say though, if
We
you
were
are a
sad that
famous
Frost
black
died.
musician, you will not necessarily die. Brandy and Busta Rhymes have both lived through horror movies. They're Brandy and Busta Rhymes,
Was one
so no one else is a shot.
one of those guys was in Deep Blue Sea? Is that right?
That was LL Cool J was in Deep
LL Cool J, he's in it, and I think he makes it. Samuel L. Jackson,
bites it when a shark bites him during an inspirational speech.
Yes.
It was beautiful.
probably the only thing that movie is known for.
Yep.
I remember the part where LL Cool J climbs into an oven to escape a shark,
Oh my
but
goodness.
that's the
What
only
a
other part.
I don't remember the fight of the shark.
He is
the
memorable.
shark
He has a
biting Samuel
parrot.
Jackson.
He's all sassy.
Okay,
Okay.
speaking of characters,
Musician,
Jaws. Jaws, the shark is definitely memorable.
Yes.
Dun dun.
Can you really think of any
Dun,
of the
dun.
actual character humans in that movie?
We're gonna need
I
a bigger
know
boat
by
human.
name.
Yeah,
Dun,
there's
dun.
there's sheriff and there's the old timey boat captain.
Mm-hmm.
Dun,
And the sheriff had family, and then there's the awful mayor who wanted to get people
Awful
eaten,
mayor, scientist
eaten
guy.
because of money. Yeah, the scientist guy.
I don't
That's the whole
remember the
cast.
family at all. I don't care about the sheriff's family.
They had a boat.
One of them screamed once.
The wife had a drinking problem.
What is wrong with using a forgettable character as a main member of your cast? Like, as one of the main characters?
See, it depends on, for instance, if you're doing a series, for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't focus on every character in a big ensemble cast. So I can see, like in a Star Trek movie, some of them are just there because they have to have everyone there, but it's like they have 2 lines in the whole movie. Like, I don't know, Deanna Troy in at least 1 or 2 of the Star Trek
But
movies.
she also has the
She's
entire
not-
series behind her.
True.
Right.
Jen, I'm surprised you have not ranted this because I was hoping for it.
I'm getting ready to.
All right. Character in Walking Dead who goes into troublesome situations
Carl.
and then someone else has
Where's
to go.
Carl? Does anyone know where Carl is? Lori's lost Carl again because Lori has no character. Her only job is looking for Carl.
Who is Carl?
Carl is Rick's son because he doesn't have a character either. Rick is the main character who's being developed by his family that he has to take care of because none of them have any personality.
So when Carl is gone, why are we actually upset then?
We're upset because it reflects poorly on Rick's fatherhood. That's why we're upset. No, the crux of this rant that Kathleen is fishing out of me one line at a time is that children and women largely often serve to prop up your male protagonist because we haven't taken the time to develop the male protagonist in a way that makes us, as audience members, specifically attached to him by himself. So if Rick has improved. I haven't read the comics, so I can't speak to the comics. I've watched the first 4 seasons of Walking Dead, and I won't spoil the most recent episodes because I haven't seen them. So, in season 2, which is when the writing hit the rails, it went off the rails and tanked. They sit and podunk around on a farm for like ever. And while they're at this farm, they spend the entire time having 2-on-2 conversations where they repeat the same words over and over again, but no one ever develops their characters. Specifically, we're supposed to care about Rick, because Rick is the leader of the group. But all Rick really does is kill zombies. He doesn't have any character revelations. He doesn't learn anything, specifically new about himself or his family until we hit like mid-season finale when they reveal the big plot twist or whatever. But while we're in that miasma in the middle, the drama is driven mostly by Lori can't find Carl.
How old is Carl?
Carl is, I think, 12.
Oh.
He might be 10, 11, or 12 at this point. Old enough to have a personality and have opinions and do things. But specifically, all of the choices he makes are, at one point, he gets grouchy and becomes a little spitfire. And the reason why he does that is not because, it's time for Carl to have character arc. No, it's a one-off sort of chapter thing to show that Rick is not being there for his son. That's the whole point. Rick is off shooting zombies, and Carl obviously is not being taken care of by his mother because his mother doesn't know where he is. Carl, get in the house. Carl, get in the car. Carl, get behind me. Has anyone seen Carl? Can you book in on Carl for me? Lori's useless and I hate her. There's a specific time Carl turns into a little jerk and steals a gun and decides he's going to go out and shoot a zombie. And I'm going to quote Adam from yourmoviesucks.org in this because he said it really well. He's like, did you really think that they were going to kill Carl when he went off to shoot the zombie? He's like, Adam says that his first thought was not, oh no, Carl, it was, who's Carl gonna get killed now? Because he's a prop, and he's only there to propel the plot forward, and he's not actually going to be in danger.
Does he get someone killed?
Yeah. He gets the only good character killed.
Oh, that's a shame.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Speaking of possible props, it's been a long time. I just like your opinion. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. What's your opinion on Dawn?
I can't say because I haven't watched Buffy the Vampire.
Okay, I'll say Dawn is. Let's just say around the middle towards the end. All of a sudden, Buffy acquires a sister.
The last
Whoops.
season.
Yeah, it was either the last. Yeah, like she was an only child.
That's a thing.
And then all of a sudden she had a teenage sister that was, only a few years younger than her. And apparently they did a little recon where she had been there all the time. Now, a few episodes later, there is a revelation that the audience already knew better be coming. That's like, no, it turns out, well, okay, depends on how you see it, but if anything else, Dawn is more of a construct. She is a real person, but as far as I can tell, she's closer to Buffy's daughter than she is to her sister, but that's another issue. But
Is she a clone?
no, she doesn't look anything like Buffy.
Is she a bad clone?
No,
Yeah, she could have been baked too long.
Yes.
She's a key.
She's an evil clone.
Okay.
She's a gateway to a key, and they keep her from opening a dimensional gateway or becoming the dimensional gate or
So
whatever.
she didn't
She's-
come into the world the way the rest of us did.
Right. But the point is, there's actually Buffy is very self-aware. So there's an episode where Dawn gets kidnapped, and then Buffy gets like, Dawn's been kidnapped. It must be Tuesday. Guess when Buffy was on TV when it was on the network?
Oh my
Tuesday.
goodness.
On Tuesdays.
That's a good joke.
Yeah, Buffy, Dawn's main purpose was to get kidnapped. Be put at risk, so Buffy would have a reason.
Can anyone say Daphne from Scooby-Doo?
Yeah.
What did she do? She did nothing. She just got trapped and kidnapped and stuck places.
And look
The
pretty.
problem is,
Look pretty,
even
danced.
though they're, I dare say, useless characters, I won't say I'm agreeing with that statement, but
I can talk about some useless characters if you like to.
but you remember them.
Yeah, well, actually,
So,
especially
back to
later.
Forgettable.
Yeah,
Back to forgettable characters.
I'm trying to think of things that made her memorable, and I think it was actually, despite the fact that she was a prop, she actually, especially later, because probably the good writer, Joss Whedon, actually had her own personality. And there was actually reasonable, some of the trouble she got into seemed to be advancing her personality, not just advancing the
Well,
plot.
there's how you write a character. The character is developing. A human being
Right.
learns from what they've done, whereas a prop needs to get back in the house.
And that's a great example because she starts out as like the concept is she's a prop.
Yeah.
And then through some careful writing, some little bits of details, she turns into something else.
And she
So, it's not the origin of the idea, it's the what you do with it.
and she accidentally curses people without meaning to.
Don't tell me
know.
these things. I haven't got that far yet.
Yeah.
La la la.
I was just kind of wondering for everyone's input as to how we, as writers, avoid writing forgettable characters.
Are forgettable characters always bad? Because it
Yeah.
seems like sometimes they're useful.
But like how, I think for me, what I do is if I have a character, not my main character, but if I have kind of side characters that might even only show up a few times, I try to write little scenes that will never make it into the book, but with them, and kind of what they're doing during other scenes in the book. And I guess for me, that helps me to kind of get to know the character better, even though no one else is probably ever going to read them. For me, it helps me to get them more fleshed out, and I feel like that comes through in the book.
That's a good
Part
idea.
of your Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a character in the book I'm writing. It's like she's the female best friend of my character. Well, my main character has a foster brother and a best friend. And it's like, which one of those two people? It's almost like they're interchangeable. Do I want in this scene? And it's like, do I really need both of these characters?
That's something writers often have to collapse characters for that very reason. Fedora, you brought up the term Bible, and it is not in the King James Version sort of way, so could you please just explain that real quick?
Actually, I was just thinking we could probably have a whole episode on a story
We
Bible.
probably ought to. But just in brief, it is simply that the writer is going to know lots and lots and lots of stuff that never actually makes it into a book. But you have to keep that in some kind of organized fashion. And there are various kinds of software programs that will help you do that. I personally don't do that. I have chapter by chapter synopsis, I have outtakes, I have notes, I have character
I have a
lists,
timeline in Excel.
Exactly. You
I have a
know,
notebook and a
timelines.
box of jelly rolls.
A box of jelly rolls. What
So everyone's
Gel
different.
pens.
We'll put it like that.
I've
Anyway.
killed everything we were saying. I'm so sorry.
Well, we're just talking really about the iceberg approach, where just a little bit of it is above the water and everything else is underneath.
Right. And that's actually the case.
And so, like, from the top side, it might look like some of your characters are sort of undeveloped, but if you have some idea of what they are and, what they're cut down to is sensible, well, it's fine, probably. It's fine.
I would go a little bit farther than that. There is a danger in making characters or certain characters too interesting if they're not key enough to what you're talking about.
Yes, like, why aren't you writing their story?
For example,
Then why aren't you?
Yeah.
once again, I like to quote some of the based ones, and one of the best creators of characters ever, people generally think, is Charles Dickens. And he himself said that his best book was Great Expectations, so that's where I'm starting. There is a character in there that is completely unforgettable and completely useless. And, of course, he had padding to do to make his serials work, and so that's why he has these wonderful characters, but they are not pertinent. And the one that I'm talking about is called the Aged P. He is a lawyer named John Wemmick, the custodian of the money that Pip has to live on in London. And Wemmick invites him for dinner, and you get to meet the Aged P. They have a little drawbridge over a moat, and they have a cannon that makes deaf Aged P happy. And it's great. It's great fun, but it's completely useless to the book. So that's a danger. Don't overwrite the characters. Don't make them too interesting, because then they are distracting from the main point.
Well, I think that's very good to remember. You have to make sure that the focus of your reader is on the characters you want them to be focused on. And that's one reason throwaway characters are so important and helpful. I just...
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to know, how do you tell whether a character that is not supposed to be a throwaway character is functioning as a character versus as a prop?
Well, ideally, they would be both or more.
But how do you tell if they're not functioning as a character?
Can you replace them with a lamp?
Yeah, you can replace them with a lamp or a tree.
But, like...
No, actually, a little bit. Could you replace them, pick another real character? Like, so you have a character go in, it's like, okay, now could I imagine this person replaced with Kirk? You know, James T. Kirk from the Enterprise. How would that change the story? And if it wouldn't change the story at all, it's like, is your character personality interchangeable with somebody else?
Yeah, if you could put someone else in.
Gender.
It depends on what you're looking for.
Like, if I have a kidnapping victim.
The test is that you're trying to run is the character that you're taking out strong enough? So, like, is that character functioning within the story? You know, if I kidnapped Carl from Walking Dead from Season 2, it would not be the same as if I kidnapped Carl from Walking Dead from Season 4. Because by then, he's developed into a character.
Because he's 14?
Because he's 14. Yes. Or 16. I don't know how he's supposed to be. He's wearing a hat now. Now, most of his character is holding the baby. But the baby doesn't have a character. The baby is most definitely a prop, and often it's a doll. So
It really is a prop.
So it really is a prop. But the point is that if I kidnapped a character that is not strong, a character that is forgettable, then they might as well have stolen the main character's teddy bear. As opposed to if I kidnapped a character that was well fleshed out, I would be concerned for that character's safety.
Okay.
But you almost have to ask someone else about this, because the character might be better fleshed out in your mind than the character actually is in
Which
your
is
writing.
why you have to love your beta readers.
Look at your big action heroes, your Bruce Willises and your Liam Neesons. What do they have that is the MacGuffin? What they're going for? It's a girl, a young, cute, pretty girl, so that all you have to do is get a look at her to have some sympathy for her. So there are a lot of shortcuts that a lot of people are going to be taking.
Oh.
Am I wrong?
I don't like that at all.
It's what happens.
No, well, that's...
Tropes versus women.
Yeah. That's very... that's going right back to the prop element. Well, they could have stolen his prized lamp, and he'd be just as concerned. She's a forgettable character,
well,
as
I
opposed
don't
to if
think
they
the audience would be just as concerned. I hope not.
Here's the thing.
audience doesn't care about this girl.
If
they know about this girl.
They do.
They care about Liam.
Pretty and little.
The girl functions as property of the main character, the main guy, and motivation for him to go do something. And that's the problem with that kind of character.
Oh, it's problematic. I don't disagree. I'm saying that you'll see it.
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, so your character...
Because it's a shortcut.
It's a trope.
If your character is kidnapped, would it make any difference if it was a random stranger being kidnapped?
Or you could develop a strong character, and then we not only are concerned about the safety of that character, we also are interested in what they're going to do while they're being kidnapped. You have another avenue for storytelling, because does the character get kidnapped, do they kick back? Or do they cry? Or how do they behave? Are they steadfastly confident that they're going to be rescued by your main character, or are they shriveling and crumbling in indecision because they don't know if the main character loves them enough to come after them? I mean, that's a character. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing to read and write about. And there's no reason why your kidnapped character can't have that to them. I mean, that's interesting. As opposed to stealing something only because it affects your main character, you have to remember that person you've stolen is a human being. That's what makes a strong plot.
Let me take this from a different angle, and I mean, I'm still on topic, but I'm going to change the point a little bit. Think about screenplay writing, and right now, one of the things that's being pushed is you want to not only be able to sell it to the producer, you want to be able to sell it to the high name actors. Yeah. You want the actors to play. Well, okay, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not a professional screenplay writer, so I leave that to those who are professional to give the opinion. But what I am thinking about is sitting back and thinking, if I was an actor, and you gave me X character to play, would I want to play that character, or is that character so forgettable that it would not matter if I played him or John Doe down the street played him?
Well, let's revisit our good friend Liam Neeson for that answer. I love Liam Neeson.
Oh, me too.
I love him very much. When I was in middle school, I had a crush on him and printed a picture of him out and put it in my notebooks because I loved him. I was a strange child.
We won't touch that, but go ahead.
You better not, child, man.
Yeah,
what's wrong with you?
Gross. But Liam Neeson has his collection of roles that he loves. Mm-hmm. And then he has his collection of roles that put his kids through private school. And you can tell which ones are which. He unfortunately, lost his wife a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And he was depressed and very upset and had a hard time working. And that affected sort of the kind of jobs he took, because he took a lot of really dumb, throwaway, whatever jobs. Star Wars is one of those jobs. Yeah. He did not care about Star Wars, but he was going to get paid well for Star Wars, so he did it. And you can tell on screen, Qui-Gon Jinn does not look like he's happy to be there. No. And he's not having a lot of fun. Then we've got, Clash of the Titans. He shows up, he puts on the costume, he shouts the line that they use in all the trailers, and that's all his job is. He didn't care about Clash of the Titans. Then you bring something like The Grey, in which he plays a character who's at the end of his rope, and he has a relationship with his fellow cast members, and he's going through stuff that Liam himself is currently going through, had gone through just not too long ago. You can tell on screen he cared about that character. And you can tell it was well developed. He knew who he was. He put thought into who his character was. The script put thought into who his character was. That's a strong and rememberable character versus who he plays in the Taken movies, whose only job is to scream to speak growlingly into a phone and punch people in the face.
And use his particular set of skills.
Yes, and that's why you go see that movie. It doesn't mean he's a strong character, though. It doesn't mean that his daughter is a strong character, because she's not. She's a side of beef.
It's just a template for a certain kind of movie.
Exactly.
After the first time she gets kidnapped, you think she would understand what to do next couple times.
Liam Neeson gets kidnapped in the second one with his wife.
Oh, and she has to come rescue him?
They get taken.
That's great.
Yeah, have you seen the second one?
I thought she got and I remember
the wife
getting
they go to Turkey, and him and his wife get kidnapped together, and they're held hostage, and the girl is in the pool in the hotel, and he calls, and he's like, "We have been taken. You have to come find us." And so she it's not very good, but go watch it.
I really thought she was taken. No. What was the... Okay, sorry. This is conversation afterwards, but there was one where she was being told you're about to be taken.
That's the first one.
No, I'm talking about the second one.
It
Or it might have
Later
been the
one.
wife. I
Well,
don't know.
sequel. Yeah.
It'd
Maybe the third
actually be a
one.
little bit better if she'd been taken like every single time. 'Cause then it would be a little more schlocky, a little more.
Yeah, it'd be a little more self-aware. It's like
Yeah.
you know that you're only here to watch Liam Neeson punch people in the face.
But that's why I go
I
see
can't
Liam
believe you
Neeson.
took my
Because
daughter
I want to
again.
watch him punch somebody in the face.
And there's space for that. It doesn't mean he's a strong character, though. He's a forgettable character who does some really good face punching.
How do we flesh out those kinds of characters? Like, I think in this case, the kind of characters that we want to flesh out, because some of these characters, as you said, we're going there to see Liam Neeson punch someone in the face. That is what you're there for. But in cases where you want your characters to be fully realized people, how do you flesh out those characters that you've realized are more cardboard than human?
Well, let me answer that with this is my thought only. And I'm going to go back to, God, I forget which of us said it. One of the ladies said it earlier.
Let's see. What are the
I know.
Better chance
But
of being
I'm just
correct.
trying. I can't think.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't
like
think
one
who
or
it
two.
is. But anyway, first off, is the character part of your main cast, irregardless of primary antagonist or protagonist? But are they part of your main cast, or are they a prop? Just somebody, the bartender, to borrow a term earlier that Matt was using and I used as well. If it's a bartender, I really don't need to flesh them out. I need to make them disappear more into the background, in my opinion. If they're part of the main cast and they're not that fleshed out, I've got a problem. And I need to figure out how to flesh them out from there. So number one is role. What role are they playing? And number two is I have to remember that even if they are part of a setting and not a main character, the character, regardless of how much I fill them out in my story Bible, is supposed to be human. Or at least a form of human. That's throwing in androids, guys.
Androids and aliens.
Aliens, yeah. And they should be a sense of, I'm part of the background, but I might be somebody. Okay, that's my opinion.
So what methods do you guys use to flesh out characters that are part of your main cast that you need to have more well-rounded? Meredith, you mentioned writing little shorts about
Character
these characters.
interviews also, like just writing up an interview and interviewing your characters and just typing that up. I mean, again, it could be something totally stupid, like what's your favorite ice cream flavor? And they may never eat ice cream in the book, but you know that, and it helps to make them more of a...
Yeah, so I was saying two things. One is make sure in your story Bible, even if it never gets into the book, make sure they have a full life and full backstory and likes and dislikes, and they have their own goals that may or may not show through. But one cheap and often cliche, but not always, way to do it is give your character lack of a better word, a neuroses or a tic. Basically, this can be turned into a cliche really easily. So, but one thing that's overused is making them an alcoholic, for example.
Yeah.
So, but there are ways to do it that isn't cliched.
I say, let's go back to Elmore Leonard from last week and follow his advice, which is to have the people say something in a particular way that is identifiable so that you don't even need those dialogue tags, and it reveals personality through their speech and a little bit through their name as well. I think that is an excellent way to go.
And I think also is to keep your characters from being robotic. If your character is running from their lives, somebody is trying to kill them, trying to attack them, and they are not showing any fear, that's not human. Humans are afraid. It doesn't matter if they're the number one gladiator, warrior, whatever, they're going to be afraid if someone's coming at them with a knife. Like, that's going to happen.
So choose a few details to add. It don't have to be overabundance, but a few things
like,
that
make
show
them a
their...
human.
Yeah.
Like, humans are not always nice. They're not always strong. They have flaws, and they have strengths, and they have weaknesses, and there's so many different things. And I think if you make your character... The more you flesh them out, the more you give them, maybe there's a food they don't like, or there's something that they have an allergy to, or just something that makes them more human. Makes them more so they're not just this random person on a page.
I just had an image in my head. I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer. I just had an image. Big male warrior of this story suddenly sees a spider and jumps up on top of it. Oh, kill it! Someone kill it!
How much interesting did he just get? I just wanted to, I agree with everything everyone has said. The way that we get to know a character is the same way we get to know another human in real life, which is how they react to things. If, when Fedora mentioned earlier that the daughter in Taken was a trope character, I reacted to it with grimacing. And now all of a sudden you know that I have feelings about that sort of use of women in media.
Uh-huh.
You learned that about me just now. And I didn't have to tell it to you directly, you learned that. So anything, when you know where your character comes from, any human is the culmination of their experiences in their life. So if we're talking to a barista and the barista is there to deliver a certain plot point information or to know where the package was delivered, the barista knows. Barista doesn't necessarily have to have a name, but if you know that this barista is trying to put herself through film school, then the way that she responds to your character might change instead of it being like, oh, it's down the street. And it says, you're looking for a package. It's like, a package, huh? Well, I saw a man come in, and he looked a lot like this actor, and I think he went this way, or something.
He had a great cameo. He had great side view, if I could just framed him in the right...
Yeah, if she's important enough to exist for a whole chapter, then you should give her that sort of attention. But if she's... And she doesn't even need a name. But if she's there long enough that, like, she's influencing the scene, I think that she needs a little bit of something. Not a lot of something, just a little something.
Yeah, I basically agree with this. Like, if... In the category of cheap tricks, if you're writing a trope and like you can't help it, it's going to be a stereotype of a person. Just add like a little twist on him, like something small that isn't going to get in the way of the role they're supposed to play, but just something to give them a little, like a feather on the hat. Like the character's the hat, and you just put a feather on it.
Yeah,
it's not much, but it's something.
The character is the big, beefy, strong man of the group, and he wears a pink beret.
Or he's scared of spiders.
Yes.
Now, there are some people, somehow, that become characters. I forget what his name is, but in Voyager, there's a character you never see. Oh, here's an example, actually, I remember the names. But in Columbo, Mrs. Columbo is a character. You never see her, but she's a character.
We learned so much about her.
Yeah.
I think something that Melanie said earlier was really important. Characters, just like people, we all have goals and desires and things that we want. And your characters don't necessarily want the same things you as the writer want. So if your character wants something that is at odds with how you're going to get the scene finished, then honoring that character and figuring out how to get what you want through all of that is going to be a challenge, but it's going to make a much more interesting scene than just having everybody fall into line. When everyone falls in line, those characters are not actually characters, and we forget them. Yeah. They're just plot points or props for your own desire.
It's the same as if, in the scenario I made up earlier, if you find out that the package was delivered to this building from the barista, and the barista doesn't have a character, you might as well have said, we went into the Starbucks and found out the package was delivered to this building. Like, that scene is completely useless. Because the character was useless, the interaction was useless, we didn't learn anything about anybody that way. Like, you can just subtract it entirely. Or you could write a strong character and make an interesting scene that entertains your audience.
Like, maybe the film student is in on it and needs the money in order to keep getting through film school.
What an interesting story that is.
And now they have to beat the information out of her. Boom.
But her best friend is a really strong dude who wears a pink beret and is kind of afraid of spiders, and he's coming for you.
So they bring a spider with them to throw at him.
Do they know about the spider ahead of time, or does one just kind of...
They learned about it in the first scene because a man dressed as a luchador jumped on the chair, screaming because he saw a spider.
Jumped on this the chair in the coffee shop?
Yes.
Wow.
Moving right along. I think it says steam.
I was just thinking about, there's this big, beefy guy, former football player. He's now a lawyer. Yeah, he has a little hairball dog, one of those footballs. So see, makes him,
There's
a hairball dog that he loves.
Yes.
There is a character
Takes to work with him.
in Blade Trinity, which is a fun movie, not a good movie. Should make that distinction.
Yes.
He is played by like a WWE wrestler. He's a big dude, big blonde dude, terrifying, and has a little Pomeranian that he loves. That he has turned into a vampire Pomeranian, so its mouth opens and you're just horrified, and he's just, you're such a cute little dog with it in his face. And you're like, you were torturing someone. You're in the middle of torturing someone, and you stop to make kissy faces at your dog. Who are you? It's brilliant. I
Why is
remember
the
that.
movie about you?
He was awesome.
I did the same thing in The Seventh Son recently, when no one had any character and it wasn't important, and then one guy showed up with 4 arms and just as many swords and kicked some butt, and I'm like, why isn't the movie about you?
The wrestler guy also had, like, he had silver-plated teeth. He had gotten vampire version of a grill. Like, his grill done. It was great. Forgettable characters, but interesting. He was not a throwaway. He was a prop, but he was an interesting prop, and I liked that very much.
It was memorable.
He was. Him and his little kissy faces.
Oh,
at the
I was just
Pomeranian.
remembering, in my story, the little hairball in my story was named Rapunzel because she was all hair.
Oh my goodness.
Aww.
Yeah.
Aww.
And on that note,
We'll all remember Rapunzel.
wow. So, any other comments on forgettable characters, or what should avoid them?
Yeah,
What were they again?
I have a little rule of thumb that I go by, which I'm not suggesting that necessarily anybody else should, but I think when I read something, if I read more than 2 lines of physical description and 1 line of something else, like personality, mentally, or something like that, that's too much. So I would say that 1 or 2 sentences of physical description plus 1 sentence of something else, personality, for example, is just about the max when you introduce a character.
How do you balance that sort of... I know that now we prefer a sort of brevity. We prefer, when we're reading, not to be given the volumes of information about the setting and the characters and the outfits and everything. We prefer a much more streamlined story. How do you balance streamlining your story with creating characters that are memorable and
You figure out
well-rounded for
scenes
themselves?
that let your character come out through the scene. You figure out
the
what
dialogue.
the character is based on what type
Reactions.
of coffee they like to order and what they react to when something else happens.
Elmore Leonard!
Yay!
Yeah.
I was going to say, yes, with that, have the scenes or have what's happening in the scene be a reflection of the character. But a good character, a memorable character, well, unlike what we're talking about, forgettable characters, are like an onion. You can take...
Ogres are like onions.
Ogres might be... Okay. But I mean, seriously. You look at the onion, you see the onion, you peel back a layer, you see more of what that onion is, and you keep on peeling and peeling and peeling, and you keep on seeing more and more of his character coming out. And you might be crying while you're doing this, but...
So when you peel back the layers, you shouldn't just find a cardboard back that stops
Exactly.
everything?
Yes.
You should find an ogre.
Yes, there's an ogre.
Or nothing if you
Or
peel it
parfait.
down far enough.
I'm coming up with this probably in my story because, again, my main character has all those layers and whatever, but, again, her foster brother, her best friend is like, yeah, I haven't, pulled back that layer. It's not coming off. Wait a minute, there's nothing under here.
Yes.
I think as far as balancing the timeout, something to look towards is more like efficiency than anything else. And efficiency, once you get to a certain limit of time, you can't go any further. You can't go any lower on time, so you need to do more with it. And layering, not only in terms of characters, but in terms of scene. Like having a scene accomplish more than one thing at a time. That's the super efficient, best way to go about it. Because not only does it, you get more things done in the same period of time, but it's also more interesting to read.
Yeah. So as Jennifer was saying with the scene with the barista, the actually going into the coffee shop instead of just saying, we found out from the coffee shop, this is where we were supposed to go. If they go into the coffee shop, the scene with the barista should tell us something about the main characters, not just the information of the plot.
They're willing to hit a woman.
That's what we've learned.
Yes.
Actually, I have a thing, take it the coffee pot, there's a power outage, and, people go into a coffee shop, and the ice cream's half price. And ice cream's half price because their backup system that runs the freezer is running low. So, this is fantasy novels, so you're building world building and how technology works. It's like, yeah, you still have freezers working even though there's no power, but, it's not working at prime efficiency, and it shows up some of the other technology is being used when the power's out. And you have people talking back and forth, like, okay, this is the type of thing they do. when the power is out, and they're all wearing their special sunglasses, and in addition to world building, you're talking with characters, and
adding meat to the collection of experiences that makes a well-rounded character.
Right, and the best friend is inviting the main character and her foster brother out to go stargazing that night, and
So those scenes then are building not just character, but setting, and they're serving multiple
And
purposes.
they're also advancing the plot.
They pretty much have to, or they wouldn't
Yeah.
be telling at
Right.
all. I mean, telling in the sense of being important.
So when writing your characters in scenes, are they helping advance the plot? Yes. But are they helping advance character? Are they helping show the setting?
Yes, but what else?
Yes. Yes, but what else? I like it.
And you know what? I think that's a great checklist to end this on. So with that, tune in next week for yet another interesting discussion into the writing industry. Yes, and I have a mind blank. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. The Right Pack would like to thank STL Books for allowing us to record in their bookstore. STL Books and Gifts is St. Louis's newest independent bookstore with an emphasis on fine literature for adults and children and the most comprehensive selection of St. Louis books available anywhere. Visit them online at stlbooks.com or in person at 100 West Jefferson Avenue, Kirkwood, Missouri 63122. Tune in next week as the Right Pack will conquer yet another pondering issue in the writing industry.